Now we want to revisit each of those prior examples that we looked at, where we already verified, for instance, that the conditions are met in example 5 to estimate a population proportion. And now, given a confidence interval, we want to interpret that and see what we can conclude. Specifically, in example 5, we're told the 95% confidence level estimate for the population proportion calculated from the results collected was 0.2554 to 0.3562. Can we conclude from these results that the proportion of people who desire to start a business or have considered doing so is greater than 31%? If we look at our interval from 0.2554 to 0.3562, we can find a value of 0.31 in the middle of that interval, which means in this case we would have to say, no, the interval contains values equal to or smaller than 0.31, which is the same thing as 31%. Since that's the case, it's possible that the true population proportion is actually equal to or smaller than 0.31, so we can't support that claim. In example 6, we determined that in this scenario the conditions are not met to estimate a proportion. It's still mathematically possible to construct that confidence interval estimate. However, it's up to us to know that we cannot draw any conclusions based off the information available. While we can mathematically construct that interval, it just has no real useful meaning in the real world. In example 7, we determined that the conditions were met, and now we're given the 90% confidence interval estimate for the population proportion, calculated as 0.7345 to 0.8019. Can we conclude from these results that the proportion of people who prefer to wait and stream new movies at home is greater than 47%? 0.47 is smaller than all values in this interval, so yes, we can support this conclusion because all values in the interval are greater than 0.47, which again is the same thing as 47%. In example 8, we have another situation where the conditions have already been verified to be met. So we look at the 90% confidence interval estimate, which is 0.1568 to 0.1952. Can we conclude from these results that the majority of people who prefer to purchase vinyl albums instead of or in addition to streaming music? We've hit this idea of majority before. There's no specific numerical value given to us. We just need to know that for a majority, we would have to have P greater than 0.5. Equal to 50% would be half. Larger than 50% is a majority. In this case, all the values in our confidence interval are less than 0.5. So we would have to say no. The interval contains values equal to or less than 0.5, in this case really only less than 0.5, which is the same thing as 50%, that tells us that it's possible, based off this confidence interval, that the actual, not population mean, but that the actual population proportion is something like 0.18 or 18%. If only 18% of people feel this way, that is definitely not a majority.